Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. We've looked at the second time Axel Asher intermingled with the DC and Marvel universes, and today I'm taking issue with a triad of comics with new spins on the old Amalgam universe. We begin with Ty Templeton writing Dark Claw Adventures #1, accompanied on art by Rick Burchett and Linda Medley. Let's see if these comics make us want to turn the page or turn our heads.
The cover gives us our first clue that this is heavily influenced by the comics based on Batman the Animated Series, with the classic silhouette given a Dark Claw spin and the character more formally represented in the corner. It's a simple, cool reference, but if I'm being honest, Claw does kinda look awkward just standing there. Anyway, we begin in a dive bar where Patch Malone is at a poker game. He listens to various lowlives, seeing if one of them will be the guy that shot his parents, but nothing so far. Wouldn't you know it, though, he's got a good hand and he's approached by a pair of cyber ninja assassins.
Those must be the best trio of words in all of comics. Just something about cyber ninja assassins puts a big old smile on my face. Let's see if the story tries to murder that.
A voice match confirms Patch is their target, so he goes on the offensive, getting electrocuted and shot in the shoulder, which gets him killing mad, but he remembers he doesn't do that anymore. However, he is fighting cyborgs, so chopping off their artificial limbs wouldn't be quite so bad. He soon leaves them tied up as Sparrow arrives in their ride, singing what must have been the theme song to the campy 1966 Dark Claw TV show. As they take off, because why wouldn't this car be able to fly, Logan surmises that his attackers had to have been told where to find him, meaning Lady Talia has returned. Speaking of, she's watching footage of the bar incident, remarking how well she knows her quarry, and that after 2 years, her beloved will pay for the murder of her father, Raish Apocalypse.
You know, as these amalgamated character names go, I'm really not feeling this one. Sounds like a cheesy promotional stunt by a store at the local mall. This Sunday, it's the Raish Apocalypse sale! 10% off our entire inventory! Sunday!
Can't say the R on his belt makes things much better. In a flashback, Claw and Raish sword fight until the former lost. Somehow, and Talia remembers neither of them seeing a scorpion. Raish and Ubu Wong flew off in a plane to reshape the world with a new virus, but Claw, cursing his foe for making him do this, uses one of several Stinger missiles left behind, conveniently, to blow up the craft. Talia rushed to the wreckage, not finding her dad's body, but managing to lose 90% of her skin in the search. Nice touch with an editor's note here, referencing a non-existent cartoon this was spun off from. Anyway, the Femme became even more of a fatale, obtaining adamantium limbs, which will prove useful in her life's new mission: killing Dark Claw.
What exactly was the significance of the scorpion? I don't know why she bothered to point it out in the flashback, because it didn't seem to have anything to do with anything. I thought it'd sting one of them or something, but it just skittered along its way, near as I can tell. If it was, I don't know, the reason Dark Claw lost the sword fight, they didn't do a great job of explaining that.
Claw and Sparrow return to their underground hideout, the Burrow, both dropping in through the pneumatic tube at almost the same pace, yet somehow Sparrow lands just as her mentor is already several feet ahead of her. Weird. Anyway, she thinks his fixation on Talia has made him careless, and he agrees, to an extent, so he suits up to get in some training in the Danger Cave, once Sparrow has set up a sufficiently strenuous program. Meanwhile, Lady Talia herself is complimenting one of her minions, who's named after a 1971 George Lucas film. Kind of an odd reference, if you ask me, but at the very least it shows they're having fun with the story. A bio-tracker was implanted into Logan's shoulder, likely from that earlier blast, and he apparently hasn't detected it yet. She stands outside Logan's penthouse building, insisting to her subordinate she'll take care of matters alone.
If she gains access to his secret lair by finding a key under the welcome mat, I'm out of here.
In the aforementioned Danger Cave, Darklaw is given 5 minutes to reach the exit while fighting off life model decoys of his rogues gallery. The robots are colored a shade of magenta, complementing the suddenly pink background, all to make Claw stand out more, I'd wager. It's fine enough for the situation, though it leaves out some details on characters like the Two-Faced Goblin, Blood Crow, and Spiral Harley that'd probably be fun to see more clearly. The lights go out, but when Sparrow fails to respond, Claw realizes this isn't part of the program, and his senses are so confused by the wrecked LMDs that he's almost caught unawares by the lethal cyborg hunting him. Talia, die!
X's. Am I right, fellas? Seriously, am I right?
Logan is shocked by Talia's transformation, as she knows how easy it was to access his home, since his code words all follow his personal fixations. He doesn't want to hurt her, and claims her father gave him no choice but to use deadly force when he threatened all mutant kind with his virus, including Talia. So apparently she's a mutant, but no indication of what her powers are. After being thrown into a glass case containing a different Sparrow costume, the current one gagged and tied up against it, Talia calls him a liar for suggesting Raish would have sacrificed her for his own ends.
That display raises a few questions. If there was a Sparrow before the current one, did she meet a similar fate to Jason? Was there a fatal end for a Catherine Todd, perhaps? Could she turn intangible and was an unlikable schmuck? Also, Darklaw threw someone over his current sidekick while she was right underneath a glass case that shattered on impact. Between this and the cover of All Access number 4, I'm wondering if any universe cares about any version of Jubilee at all.
Logan mentions they loved each other once, and Talia snipes back asking if he has any affection for his own father's killer. That certainly hits a nerve, as Logan knocks her back, saying she's actually fighting a battle between love and hate, light and dark, so decides to let her make her choice as to who she is without stopping her. Apparently who she is someone that runs her claws through Logan's chest. Surprised me there. Didn't really think you had a death strike in you.
Subtle, because we all know how abundantly common the turn of phrase death strike is in everyday life, right, people?
Her love dead on the ground and empty despair upon her face, Talia tearfully removes Sparrow's gag, sparing the innocent teenager. Yet with both her father and beloved dead, she breaks off 4 of her right hand fingers, surprising since they're supposed to be adamantium, and intends to drive them into her own heart.
Oh, so that's why she has the plunging neckline. I guess a layer of fabric would have just gotten in the way of razor-sharp blade fingers.
Talia says she'd give anything to change the last 2 years, bring back both of the men she's lost, and that's when Darklaw makes it known he's still kicking, which seems more surprising to her than you'd think it should be if she knew him so well. He'll feel the sting of an impaled heart for a while, but his healing factor is resilient nevertheless. Citing his personal experience, Logan says he needed to sort out what he'd do if he finally found his parents' murderer, either let him live or live with the regret of giving in and killing him. And now that Talia's learned what it's like, she can begin the rest of her life. The comic ends with both of them feeling regret about Claw having to kill Raish, and Sparrow wonders if anyone's going to untie her anytime soon. Sure enough, the letters page has a next issue tease in a never-to-be-seen story called Secret of the Waiting Phoenix Saga.
Darklaw Adventures was pretty fun. It left some things vague that could have used better elaboration, but it made up for it with an atmosphere that built on the previous Darklaw comic while maintaining the feel of a different comic based on a cartoon, based on a comic. Anyway, too bad we didn't get to see Sparrow do much here, or show if she has any of Jubilee's powers. Next up is Generation HEX.
Written by Peter Milligan, with art by Adam Polina, Mark Morales, and Scott Bauman, the cover sees the title character and his superpowered posse raise their weapons while on horseback, with a parchment graphic reading, "The Most Wanted Mutants."
Most wanted for what? Bat mitzvahs? Interior decorating? Give me a clue here.
If the cover wasn't indication enough for you, this takes place in the Old West, specifically the nicest town in the West called Humanity, where malforms, old school term for mutants, aren't allowed. It's here that Jono HEX spent some of his boyhood, accompanied by his manure-selling father. They weren't much liked by the townsfolk because Pa HEX had suffered a mule kick to the head at an early age, making him sociable but kinda weird to others, I suppose. And there was something odd about Jono. One night, Ma HEX is going into labor, and Jono is sent to fetch the local doctor. Even though it's life and death, the family can't pay, so instead of doing no harm, the physician does no good. He suggests going to a Dr. Astor, a horse surgeon. And it's here that we get a formal look at what made Jono stand out: the facial scar over his right eye.
Though you don't really get much detail on it here. Though you could say it's because he's still a kid at the time. And let's face it, it doesn't take much of a visible difference for people to wrongfully label or mistreat a kid.
With little other option, Jono goes to the local eatery to get Astor, but he laughs him off, saying his mother only smells like a horse. And in an early display of his temper, Jono grabs the overfed quack and explains the gravity of the situation. Points for the guts, but it just gets him thrown out. Without a physician, he returns home to the tragic news that his mother and newborn sister didn't survive. It's in the very next panel that we see the effect it has on Pa HEX. He submitted to alcoholism, and when people only stared and refused to help him, it triggered the latest of several strange sensations building up within Jono. One night, the town's children set fire to the HEX's home, while their parents pretended to be oblivious.
Oh, sure, they get to commit arson and homicide, but when I was their age, I couldn't ride my bike outside the block I lived on.
The power within the boy erupted, so strong it burned a gulch right across his young face, which is some nice metaphor usage right there. And being too late to save his father, he escaped the pint-sized murderers and branded a malform. We jump ahead several years, and that boy had grown into a strong, mean leader of a group of others like him, forced to live as outlaws in the gang Generation HEX.
Admittedly, that's clever wordplay, but in the context of the story, I don't think it makes all that much sense. The Marvel team of teenagers was called Generation X because they were going to be the next generation of X-Men. Most of this band of riders looks like they're full-grown adults, so where does Generation X come from?
This shot of the group, however, seems to kind of curve in the upper left portion, which makes this Emma Frost-looking lady very weird-looking. And I don't know why this guy is crouching while there's several horses approaching from behind. He's gonna get trampled. Anyway, there's a convention of marshals and sheriffs where a guess what passes for a keynote speaker, a man named Bat Trask, gives the lowdown on HEX's crew. The psionic Madam Banshee, Johnny Random, who can create thunder, especially when his acne's bad. No idea what that means. Skin Hunter, who absorbs skin. White Whip, who controls her whip with her mind. The razor-skinned Retribution, and the twins Trigger. Fastest guns around, and the sister of the pair has a split personality. Trask then shows off how he intends to stop them, but not to the reader.
Guess we're gonna have to find out next week. Same Bat Trask time, same Bat Trask channel.
A mail train is forced to a stop, so the mutant outlaws can make off with the wages intended for the 7th Cavalry, and they're casual enough about the experience to take jabs at one another before finally unlocking the car. But inside turns out to be 3 robots, who begin attacking the group. Skin Hunter, turns out, has an unusual digestive system. His stomach boils his food into rock-hard projectiles, which he's able to fire from his flexible body with enough force to break one of the machine's claw hands. Not sure who the DC character is there, but excrement bullets is certainly a superpower I've never heard of until now. As it happens, Trask was also on the train, noting how his Razormen have artificial brains capable of perceiving their malformity, and won't stop until their targets are dead. Narration points out, however, that Trask was only able to build these mechanical marvels because he himself is a mutant, only his power is subtle, with a genius-level intellect. The team retreats, and being the fastest, longest riders in the West, they're confident by nightfall that they're in the clear. Unfortunately, they hear a noise closing in. The Razormen on horseback.
Old West robots riding horses while chasing mutants. Welcome to comic books, ladies and gentlemen.
So the outlaws ride on. If their horses fell, they'd get them up and ride further. Even after 3 days and nights non-stop, the robots are still on their tail. When the horses started dying, the twins have a disagreement, including the participation of the sister's alternate personality that is broken up by one of Johnny Random's attacks. HEX calls them to order, recognizing the local terrain and taking most of the group with him, while the twins Trigger and Retribution stall their mechanical pursuers.
I'm no animal expert, but 3 days and nights? Unless non-stop was some kind of exaggeration, I think those horses would have realistically been dead much sooner.
We return to the quiet town of humanity, where a man says hello to a couple women and they call him Dr. Astor, which has to be a mistake on their part because Astor was the pudgy dude that cared more about his meal than the lives of a woman and child. But this afternoon of peace and character misnaming is interrupted when White Whip, Skin Hunter, Johnny Random, and Madame Banshee show up. They spend an hour terrorizing the citizens, announcing they're about to start killing them off when Jono arrives to run them out of town, his energy now fully concealed by his bandana and clothes. He fires on them and they run off, with one woman remarking he must be handsome regardless of his covered face. The grateful town fawns over him, women throwing themselves at HEX, and the actual Dr. Astor offering medical services. You can tell it's him because he gets called out as a horse surgeon by the other town doctor. Even the local shopkeep is willing to reopen his store and comp the stranger whatever he needs. Jono recognizes most of the folks, including those who'd burned down his family home in their youth. And he had a burning desire to divorce them all from their kidneys.
The only thing that stopped him were the outrageous prices of organ divorce attorneys.
After seeing his home had been built over like his family was a stain to be wiped away, HEX is asked to stay as town sheriff, but he declines, needing to be moving along, though warning that even worse malforms are headed their way with evil intent. They beg again for his aid, and he agrees, though they'll have to do exactly as he says. And I guess ignore the energy clearly brewing from beneath his face. Shortly, he meets back up with his gang, just in time to see the Razormen close in. Rather curious why the horses carrying robots haven't died so far. HEX leads his people back into town, which narration redubs Malform Town. Normal folk, keep out! The citizens of humanity took the stranger's advice, using whatever materials they could find to pass themselves off as malforms. HEX declares they'll go find another town to terrorize, and the gang leaves. The townfolk are relieved, but are a bit perplexed by how familiar the one with the scar looked, and are reminded of Jono's family, though with some clear inaccuracies.
So now they recognize the scar. Not the fact that the leader of this band is wearing the same clothes as their savior from before. Not the fact that more than half the group terrorized them for an hour. They just recognize the scar, but only in relation to Jono when he was a kid. Even though when HEX was playing Cowboy Hero, he didn't hide his eye at all. Man, these people are stupid.
More riders are heard approaching, and the disguised people think they're just more malforms they can fool. But it's the Razormen, who scan the folks of humanity, determining them to be malforms, there's even a fun little printout, and proceed to massacre the town. Watching from a hillside gravesite just above town, Jono pauses at a few unmarked graves, possibly belonging to his family, and the comic ends as he rides with his bandits to Mexico, glancing back at humanity and laughing. The next issue mentions some time travel shenanigans involving Magneto's deadliest nemesis, Coltron, and goes so far as to call Bat Trask trash, just like HEX did earlier. Even the letters page doesn't like this guy.
It was by no means a happy ending, since you have to imagine some of the people in that town probably had nothing to do with the death of the HEX family. But then again, this wasn't a story about heroes. It was a story about outlaws driven to crime. It nicely utilized the themes of prejudice the X comics are known for dealing with, showing the destruction that can be wrought by people who allegedly want to protect people like them, but they only look at the surface of things. Finally, we look at JLX Unleashed.
Written by Priest, no first name given in the end credits, with art by Oscar Jimenez, Hannibal Rodriguez, and Patricia Mulvihill. The cover sees the team, with some old faces and new, alongside Amazon, while they fight a dragon made of fire amongst some buildings. To stop Fin Fang Flame.
We're going to need a lot of water balloons.
We begin in a secret shrine in Senegal, where Savage Shaw has gathered a few other villain types in the Hellfire League of Injustice to exterminate meta-mutant kind. Not sure why they decided to add meta, other than to incorporate DC's use of metahumans, unless metamutants are supposed to be an evolutionary step above normal mutants, but probably not. Anyway, Lady Maxima knows this is connected to some obsession with the JLX, which, according to Dark Flamebird, possibly an evil version of Flamebird from the first set of Amalgam Comics, are apparently no longer a threat, so they'd just as well get this all over with.
I'm on a clock.
Lord Maxwell, you are a clock.
Yes, but the part of me that's a clock is in my robotic foot. I've told you that 7 times. Why does no one in our evil group listen to me?
They each toss something into a mystical pool of flame, giving various attributes to their champion. Maxwell donates a piece of technology, supposedly to give it his sterling personality. So is their champion going to act like Archer? Anyway, in the name of Mephiston, they summon Fin Fang Flame. Shaw orders the briefly disoriented dragon to eradicate metamutants that have broken mankind's genetic link, and Finn obliges, starting with the 4 who summoned him, burning them into little more than skeletal remains.
All humanity, after all, is mutated to some extent. Besides, it's only been 8,703 years since I asked to be awakened. Maxwell wasn't much of a clock after all.
That's kind of confusing. What did the cyborg have to do with some wake-up call request from nearly 9 millennia ago? Or is the dragon trying to be snarky?
An undisclosed time later, after the monster has leveled New York and the Judgment League Avengers off panel, Super Soldier is taking time to put the Statue of Liberty back where it belongs, as a beacon of hope. Amazon thinks they need to release the JLX from captivity to help out, but Captain Marvel opposes the idea, citing that their leader, Mr. X, is a Skrull soon to be extradited off-world for trial on the Kree home planet. Soldier notes disagreement with something called the Armageddon Agenda, but it's apparently law which they need to uphold, so the JLX stays put. Fang attacks, admitting it was a nice speech on Soldier's part, and Amazon confronts the beast, saying she's the one it's after. How can you be certain? Because I am.
Okay.
She lassos Fang's mouth with lightning, but he tail whips Lady Liberty, breaking the monument up some. He goes on that he won't stop making humanity suffer until the last metamutant is eradicated. No idea how that encounter ended. Fire Dragon versus superheroes? Probably not that interesting anyway, since we jump to Amazon sneaking into a prison to speak with Mr. X, now in a high-tech wheelchair and pleading for his help to save humanity. But, as Mr. X points out, it was that same mankind that passed the Armageddon Agenda, which allowed Will Magnus to legally sick his sentinels on metamutants, resulting in deaths on both the powered and non-powered sides, as well as scattering the JLX, some of whom went into one kind of exile or another. However, Ororo notes, Fang will be relentless in his attacks, and asks if the Skrull can stand to see more people wind up like his catatonic protege, Apollo. apparently X's cellmate, and not really needing that visor. As a respected JLA member, she risked a lot to break into this facility and ask for help. X eventually agrees, saying they need to break the other members of his team from the prison and fight for those who imprisoned them, if only for Metamutant Kind's deliverance.
Not the most noble of intentions, but given the circumstances, it's at least understandable that he wouldn't be immediately motivated to help people that passed a law to promote genocide. It was called the Armageddon Agenda, for crying out loud. Who does that?
Over Tokyo, S.H.I.E.L.D. Director Bruce Wayne leads the fight against Fang, but when Apache missiles don't do the trick and he has to eject from his plane, he's informed by Dum Dum Dugan that a nuclear strike has been authorized. Great, now I'll never know how Super Dragon Ball Heroes ends. I haven't even finished Dragon Ball Super! Oh, and all the lost human life, that's also terrible. Meanwhile, at Aim Star Labs, I swear if their slogan isn't something about aiming for the stars, I declare this book terrible. X is having someone released from cryostasis. Funny that the lab techs don't seem to mind taking orders from a probably well-known fugitive. Specifically, it's Apollo's brother Joshua, who's been on ice for almost a decade, angry at X for taking his bro away for the trivial reason that Josh couldn't control his powers and destroyed an orphanage, and almost everyone in it. He asks how Xavier considers himself different in his actions than what the humans did to the JLX, which is weird because he just got released, so how does he know anything about what happened to anyone? Well, if he wants to kill green genes, and yes, I said that in the biological context, he'll have to get behind a very angry dragon. Sometime later, the reformed team is on their way, with Joshua going by Chaos, Night Creeper, still out of it Apollo, Amazon, Runaway, and newcomer Iceberg. X shows them a hologram of a techno-seed, possibly of alien origin, and the source of Fang's power, which, when destroyed, will also end the beast's threat.
We, the audience, saw Lord Maxwell toss that thing into the fire pit, but how did X figure it out? No indication of an energy scan or telepathic probe, he just happens to know that the funky box is connected to Fang. I know this is a one-shot, but there are still some things you need to elaborate on, comic.
The plan is for Iceberg to freeze the beast to a low enough temperature that Night Creeper can teleport away with the seed. And I don't know why he's in nothing but green shorts. Chaos doesn't really care about their plans, because he's edgy like that, and they suddenly hit some turbulence, specifically evading missiles intended for Fin Fang Flame. With Joshua's powers building to a point he could lose control, Creeper literally kicks him out. But it's fine, he can fly. Probably. The rest of the team head out, save for X and Apollo, and as Night Creeper suits up, they prepare to face Fang.
Woe unto me. That's it. I surrender. Yes, I have seen the error of my ways. Yes, to surrender. That is what I shall do. The moment you are all dead.
This comic may have its problems, but Fin Fang Flame's personality certainly isn't among them. It's the one consistently fun element in the entire story.
Runaway ends up spending so much time moping about her missing boyfriend Wraith and how humanity deserves its fiery fate, she forgets about her role in distracting the dragon so Iceberg can get to freezing him, so he has an opportunity to blast the Ice Lady!
The woman whose power is absorbing the abilities of others screws up a mission because she was absorbed in herself. That's like meta. Mutant meta. Or something.
Runaway and Night Creeper rush to Berg's aid, the latter presuming she's dead, likely because he refuses to take the situation seriously, but she's just unconscious, so Run absorbs her powers, though she doesn't have the experience that goes with them. So warned by Mr. X, exiting their plane and leaving Apollo behind to twitch his finger a little. Apollo's catatonia barely allows him autonomic functions. He is in no condition to help.
Then why did you bring him?
Zipping by in his flying chair, X tries a psychic attack on the dragon, but is countered with a fire blast, to which he is particularly weak.
If I recall, roast Metamutant has a taste not unlike chicken. No, fish. Definitely fish.
Well, he subverted the cliche a little bit. Chaos flies in with an attack, and goes too fast to change trajectory, and ends up crashing into the beast. Specifically inside the beast. Runaway manages to freeze his head long enough for Nightcreeper to teleport inside, where he has to choose between the Technoseed and Josh, since he can only take one with him for some reason. He chooses the box and gives it to Runaway to smash, causing Fang to topple over. Before they can dissect him to see if Chaos's shielding held up, Fang wakes up and fire blasts Mr. X, stating that the seed's importance was overblown, perhaps intentionally. Before he could deliver a killing strike to the whole team, the wave cruiser crashes into him, piloted by Apollo. He struggles through his catatonia, using his solar radiation absorption abilities to draw power out of the dragon. Both defiant and whimsical to the last, Fin Fang Flame burns out, and Runaway asks the same thing I was. If he was magically powered, how could Apollo do what he just did if he was human? I never was.
Oh, well, that clears things up.
Now mutated further into a being of pure energy, Ray carries his unconscious brother as Nightcreeper suggests they leave, lest Amazon take them back to prison. She says she won't do that, since, after all, she's one of them, and the comic ends with them taking off from a giant X in the background. The next issue blurb teases the true fate of the Hellfire League of Injustice, and the JLA not being happy with Amazon siding with the Metamutants. Also, someone named Mongslot.
And that is what happens when the JLX are unleashed. I'd have to call this the weakest of the three I've reviewed here. The pacing was shaky from the start. A story element or two could have used better clarification, or just didn't make any sense. And that scene at Liberty Island just abruptly ended, and it felt really weird. But the Fire Dragon was thoroughly entertaining. If I had to pick the strongest book I've reviewed today, it would probably go to Generation HEX. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.